once again. आशा जी आपका म्यूट है.
Okay, so today we are on chapter 3, verse 33. उसके पहले भगवान कह रहे हैं कि they who, however, finding fault with this teaching of mine, do not follow it, take those fools to be deluded in the matter of all knowledge as lost. So, what is that teaching he's talking about? He's talking about Karma Yoga, doing our duty without any kind of ulterior motive or desire, simply doing it because one is supposed to do. So we'll start with verse 33, sir. Sadrusham cheshtate.
सदृशं चेष्टते स्वस्य प्रकृतिर्ज्ञानवानपि प्रकृतिं यान्ति भूतानि निग्रहः किं करिष्यति.
Okay, so he says that all the living creatures follow their tendencies. Even the wise man acts according to the tendencies of his own nature. Of what use is restraint by force? So in the previous verse, he says that follow this teaching of mine without finding fault. But now he says, but people act helplessly under the influence of the gunas. And he said, you can't control yourself. Helplessly, you will follow these tendencies. So, when this shloka came, Dr. Saab used to say, remember this shloka. Everybody works according to their nature. Don't try and change people too much. You yourself go on doing your duty. And if you can be a model, well, but also, it also meant that don't just sit down and do nothing. Don't say, okay, I'm doing my bit, what the others are not doing anything, what can I do? So he used to say that be creative. Like, for example, if you want somebody in the family to follow something, then just, find a quotation, put it on the board, or find some book which has that kind of knowledge. Just keep it by the bedside. And if that person indirectly understands these hints and takes up something, well and good. But do try, get some friend to talk to them. Do try methods by which people understand. But in spite of that, if people don't understand, then at least you don't, deviate from your path. Continue to do, don't get frustrated. Have the belief that God is there and continue to work. So this is about this shloka. And yes, sir. Sir, any question? The internet is not okay. Sir, did you have any question?
No, I didn't have any question, but I had from the example that you gave,
Right.
It is also part of our prakriti to learn. As you rightly said in that example, people have different ways of learning. People have different styles of learning, and maybe different speed of learning, pace of learning.
Correct.
So your example showed that we believe that people and we ourselves learn, but we learn according to our prakriti.
Absolutely.
So we have to encourage learning according
Yes.
to that person's ability to learn.
Right. So we have.
And I think, in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika also, this point has been stressed that you don't overexert and don't rush people into doing asanas. Let people pace. But learning is our nature as well.
Yeah, true. So that the wish, we may use the word desire, which is not the right word, but this attitude to learn, and it should be there. a person like Valmiki also decided to reform himself. And he went on chanting Mara, 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 Mara. And finally, it became Ram, Ram. And he actually reached a point where he wrote an epic. So that wish, that consistency, that abhyas always has to be there for ourselves. For ourselves, we cannot deviate from the path. And once we are on the path, it is likely, it is possible that people will, pick up. So, another story which just comes to my mind now, sir, since you also added to your thoughts, this story was told to us in the couples class. And this is a true story. It has occurred many years back it is mentioned in the scriptures also. So there is this couple who are recently married, and this wife finds out that this husband goes away every evening, okay, and he comes back after a long time, and she finds out that he actually goes to another lover of his. He loves another lady, and he goes to meet her every single day. Now, many years pass, this lady doesn't say anything. She carries out her household duties, and she's a very devoted wife. And then, um, after many years, this man contracts a disease, and he's unable to go out of the house. And he's very restless. He just cannot sit at home. His mind is totally on that other lady. And this wife, she understands. So she says that you're so restless and you're so sad. So I'm going to carry you. She puts him in a basket because he can't walk. And she carries him to the house of that other lady. And there, that other lady tells him that what a shameless man you are. You have such a wonderful wife at home, and yet you come to me every day. And then the man also realizes, and then he stops going. So he used to say that you be persistent. If you have decided to commit yourself to a certain thing, then irrespective of the odds, continue. And in the end, it is likely that things will, turn out favorably. But at least you will never have the regret in your life that you didn't do your bit. See, finally, the journey is individual. So we are there to help each other. It's like very humorously, one aunt of ours, she used to complain about her husband that he doesn't eat. She says, every day I cook food for him, but kya main chaba ke bhi dun kya usko? So I keep the food in front of him. I can't chew the food for him. So that practice has to be done by us. People can, motivate us on the path and help us, but the final thing has to be done by us. Okay, so clear about this?
Amply and adequately, also from experience. I must confess, so tend to be a bit of an evangelist, and therefore, over the years, I have sometimes been very forceful in trying to get others to do things in different ways, in ways that I think would be the right. And I must say, I have failed each and every time. In fact, the more force you use, the more defensive the other person becomes.
Yeah.
And the result is usually the opposite of what you intend.
Right.
Right. So, of course, it's another matter that despite all these failures, the habit is so, strong that one has to check it, very, very consciously. But really, what the verse says is, I think, absolutely true. And I think Dr. Saab was very, very right. Either you set an example or you give hints. That's about the max you can do. Yeah. To help the other person think differently or act differently. True. Beyond that, really, it's nature or God. Either it's Prakriti or Purusha. Those are the agencies that will take care. And I think we should withdraw.
True. Okay. So we do verse 34, sir. Sir, you're on mute, sir.
इन्द्रियस्य इन्द्रियस्य रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ तयोर्न वशमागच्छेत् तौ ह्यस्य परिपन्थिनौ.
So he's also explaining that why it happens. Attraction and repulsion are rooted in all sense objects. Man should never allow himself to be swayed by them because these are the two principal enemies standing in the way of redemption. So all these sense objects are uh, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, all those sense objects and the senses. You see, this like and dislike, this is just there. It's there. Now, what he says that they are the enemies. Now, they can be used constructively, but man has to think a lot. Again, the previous verse, the examples which we gave, that you have to be committed, that we cannot allow this like and dislike to overpower us. Okay, they have to be overruled. They can't be overpowering. And also, we can look at it in various ways. Now, how does one handle these? You see, Dr. Saab also used to give us the example of this lady, Kisa Gautami, who was a widow and she lost her only son. And when she goes to Buddha and she tells him that, please revive my son, he says, okay, I'll revive your son. But you go and get some sesame seeds from a house where there has been no death. So she goes. And when she comes back in the evening, all her emotions are settled. And she says that I didn't find a house, but by that time she's calm. So when these kind of emotions overpower us, another good technique is to use this karma yoga. Get yourself involved in work and allow these emotions to settle. Don't allow them to overpower you. They are there. They are there in the wisest of men. They are there in everybody. But don't allow them to overpower you. Get involved in something or the other. So, sir, don't mute
I'm
yourself. It's okay. You can keep yourself on.
no. There are some background noises, in the house, so
okay.
that will distract us.
But you're on on the headphones, sir. So I don't think that will
No,
come
no,
in.
those noises will come in.
Achha.
Background noises will come in.
Okay.
And now I'm afraid, Ashaji, the translation here is not very correct.
Okay. Yeah.
The translation of Paripanthino has been made as enemies.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound very correct.
So, what would be the correct thing?
Correct would be fellow travelers.
Fellow
Or
travelers.
travelers, yeah. Fellow
Pantha.
travelers,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's why. So if we use it as that translation, I'm also not going by this. Like I said, we can use them as our friends.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can use them constructively. That was my definition.
Right.
So I'm also not going according to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we have to be, I'm just making a side comment.
Yeah.
We have to be very careful about the translations.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yes.
what the verse actually says is what you explained.
Yeah.
That they will be there with everyone,
Yeah.
but one should not be going into their control,
Yeah.
influence.
Yes.
Yeah.
So friends also overpower us, put pressure on us, make us
Right.
do things.
Right.
So in that way, we could take them as contrary, as not helping us. But if
Right.
we are ourselves understanding, then they can be our friends.
Yeah.
So basically, the discrimination has to be within the individual.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we can go to the next verse.
Yes. Shreya Swanushtitat.
Yeah. So it says one's own duty, though devoid of merit, is preferable to the duty of another well performed. Even death in the performance of one's duty brings blessedness. Another's duty is fraught with fear. Yeah. So we first have to understand what is my duty, what is my capacity, what is my nature, what is my prakriti, and accordingly do our duty. That's what he's telling Arjun. That you do your duty. You're thinking that you're going to be killing everybody. But if you, Arjun is saying in the second verse that he would rather live on alms. He said that is not your duty to become a sannyasi. Now it is you're in this position. It is your duty to fight the war as a soldier and do it. And when you take up the other person's duty, there is no merit in it. And he says it is productive of fear, of danger. What it is going to produce is totally going to be contrary to your self growth or your self development. So, recognizing one's limitations, one's capacity, one's nature, one should do the work. One should, in fact, develop enthusiasm for the work and continue, and not take up somebody else's duty or some other path which one thinks is right. So that clarity and discrimination is very important. And also, you see, when you take up somebody else's duty, it's always because of desire. If you look at it deeply, why would I do something which is not my duty? I would do it because of some desire, because of some ulterior motive, or because I don't find myself capable, I don't find myself confident enough, which is again a negative thing. So, yeah.
I feel, you take up the people's duties also on account of fear. Actually, desire and fear anyway are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
But I think they are the two. Either you feel that, sometimes you're extremely pressurized,
Yeah.
right? And ultimately boils down to desire. I mean, then you feel you have something to lose, right? And so you desire the object, you feel it, you fear you will lose it, and you go ahead. But similar, I mean, from a analytical standpoint, I feel that desire and fear both are agencies that kind of sometimes kind of cause us to stray, from our own swata. So at the end, as you've been saying, it always boils down to discrimination. When the discrimination is clear and sharp, then you get the strength to be able to stick to your duties, and whatever the provocations, you leave aside other duties.
Fear also is a very strong desire because I want approval by somebody. It's a desire to gain approval, to be in the good books of somebody. So, yeah. So, any questions on this or any other thoughts? So, we'll move on, sir, unless there is anything to say.
अर्जुन उवाच अथ प्रयुक्तोऽयं पापं चरति पुरुषः अनिच्छन् अपि वार्ष्णेय बलादिव नियोजितः.
So now Arjun has a question. He says, impelled by what, Krishna, does man commit sin even involuntarily as though driven by force? So it's a very valid question. It is in consequence of those previous verses. So, sir, shall we read Krishna's answer also?
Yes. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Krodha Esha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyenam iha vairinam.
So now Arjun has a question, and now very cleverly Krishna is answering the question in 7 verses. So he's telling him that desire is the starting point, how desire is born, and how it comes in the way of the development, what is the strategy he should use to conquer this enemy. In these 7 verses, we'll hear the whole description. So let's start with this. So now the first answer is, it is desire.
Kama
What
esha,
is
krodha esha.
Kama Esha, Krodha Esha. He says it is desire begotten of the element of Rajas, which appears as wrath. Nay, it is insatiable, grossly wicked. Know this to be the enemy. Enemy number 1 is desire. Yeah. And how is it born?
Dhumena priyate vandhil.
Okay.
Yatha darshu malena cha. Yatulbena vrito garbhas. Tatha tenedam avritam.
Yeah. So he says, just like mirror, as fire is covered by smoke, mirror is covered by dust, and embryo is covered by the amnion, so is knowledge covered by this desire. Now, first we have to understand that how is this desire born? What is the origin of this desire? Rajas. He says it is born of Rajas. Now, Rajas is an agitational trait. It creates an agitation. Okay, it makes you restless. So you're unable to control it. You're unable to control that agitation. And then now he says, how does it cloud you? First, he gives 3 examples: smoke, like fire covers the smoke, and then mirrored by dust. Dust is rajas. Dust actually means rajas. Rajas actually means dust. So it becomes even more difficult to clear it. And then is tamas. It has totally clouded you, like the fetus is in the womb, which is totally dark. Your intelligence is totally clouded. The knowledge is totally clouded. So it moves gradually and it overpowers you completely. So he's telling him this is how it is. The consequence of the agitation, the consequence of the desire is this. And now then he will tell you that the strategy and everything will continue. So any questions on this?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Anybody wants to say anything? Sabir Bhai, anybody? Jay Kumar ji? So the strategy of desire is to cloud your wisdom. Your knowledge is covered. And now what do we do? So verse 39.
Avritam jnanametena jnanino nitya vairina kamarupena kaunteya analena cha.
Yeah. Now he's describing the...
analena cha.
Yeah. Okay. So Arjun, knowledge stands covered by this eternal enemy of the wise, known as desire, which is insatiable like fire. So now he's telling you the strength of the enemy. This enemy, like a flame, can just grow out of proportion. It's a very strong enemy. Now, what is the enemy? How is it born? What is the strategy? And then how strong is the enemy? It is insatiable. It can grow out of proportion. So if you encourage it, it will never stop. It's a very strong enemy. Like fire, it will spread.
Emphasizing that this is a strong enemy for the person who has knowledge. He's not talking about people. So this is very, very
Correct.
relevant to our professionals. All our professionals today They're all professionals. Whether it is a doctor or engineer or any other profession, and we see all of them get falling prey to amount of their professional bodies of
Yes, sir.
ethics also can control them. So this is very relevant, even in today's context. I mean,
Yes, sir. So you brought out a very valid point. See, this knowledge has been given to Arjun. Now, Arjun is the fit recipient of this knowledge. Knowledge can't be given to anybody. In the Yoga Sutra, we talk about the Chitta Bhumis, the Muda, Kshipta, Vikshiptam. Now, these are the three categories which are the lower categories. Now, actually, the knowledge, the Ekagra Chitta is able to understand the one who's one pointed, who's clear in his head. He's able to grasp the knowledge. But ordinary people like us who are occasionally steady, as the Vikshiptam Chitta is, they are more or less better off to receive knowledge than the absolutely dull and the deluded ones. They don't even understand what desire is. And you rightly said that people who have been educated to a high degree, they have some kind of brain capacity to imbibe knowledge or to understand. But now that knowledge is more of information. There is no deep understanding of self improvement. It's more to make a living, it's not to make a life. So it's difficult. Arjun is with Krishna now. He's trying to understand. He knows that he should fight the war, but he is overpowered by attachment. It's like he knows himself, but he's not able to put it into practice. So, like you rightly said, we know all this. We have studied all this, but we are unable to put it into practice. That tapa part is missing. That swadhyaya part is there. That tapa part which we should apply into day-to-day life, that is seriously missing. So,
sorry. I think we have to differentiate between Gyan and Vigyan. Right? So here the reference to Gyan, which is more to do with self-knowledge, whereas Vigyan has to do with knowledge on the outside, Vigyan, technology, science, etc.
okay.
So therefore, what they're saying here is, so in any case, the so-called educated people, they are, clouded by desire, all right. But here, I think what they're saying is even that is understandable. They are also men of the world. In fact, they sometimes are more clouded by desire because it is desire that has impelled them to, do many sacrifices, gain the so-called knowledge, which will get them a job, and etc., etc., etc. And they earn resources far beyond their need, on account of whatever. So then we can still excuse, they are. But even, I think what they're saying here is even somebody who knows oneself better, right? Even such a person is clouded by the phenomena of desire.
True.
So what to talk of the, or the men of the world or the women of the world? Even Jnani, self-knowledge, wise people are afflicted by the phenomena of desire.
True. Yeah, this ज्ञान विज्ञान thing is there. डॉक्टर साहब ने तब कहा था कि ज्ञान तो जनरल है, विज्ञान is special knowledge. But to put this into practice is different. Anyway, so we will go on to the next verse. Now, in the next verse, he's going to say where desire of this enemy.
today. It is not happening quickly. When I put my finger on the unmute, Earlier, it used to happen quickly. Today, it is taking a little bit of time.
So
Anyway,
we'll go
my
today.
question is,
Huh.
Sunil ji, my question is that in the earlier period, uh, yoga institutes, yoga school, and yoga ashram were training people to become yoga teachers, but it was never, becoming a qualification. And now the government has introduced the yoga teacher qualification, which is fine. I mean, there are good reasons for that. But the moment I become a qualified yoga teacher, again I get into this category where the desire will tempt me, and we see that happening. We see that happening, and people try to build a yoga empire.
Absolutely, sir.
So there has to be some antidote to this, no? There has to be some check on this, because as you rightly said, this danger exists more for people who have self-knowledge. So what is to be the antidote for this?
So before we come, let me here just mention. So when I'd gone to Kerala, and even before I met Jaykumar, so I saw this little sign outside the yoga section, which says Yog Sadhak Jaykumar. So and immediately, I knew that. So this is not the run-of-the-mill yoga teacher, right? Jaykumar, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was where I really began to appreciate Jaykumar from that time on. That even in a kind of place where the kind of people who come mostly from foreign lands would love to see grand titles against the name of the yoga teacher. But here was a gentleman who was saying that this Yog Sadhak Jaykumar in class. So I think that is the example of humility. It only shows, I think it was only a tribute to Jaykumar's teachers that they, helped inculcate that discrimination and wisdom in him. And likewise, I would say for, Yoga Institute Santa Cruz also, that, sir, qualification is in a way neither here nor there. It's a facilitative thing. It's a tool you can use, to convince the world of something. But what's really important is how the teacher has, shaped you in what is the spirit in which yoga has been taught. That becomes very, very important. So it is by level 1, level 2, level 3 is while yes, it is symptomatic of a curriculum kind of based approach, but going back to 2 verses back, if we are able to utilize that for discipline, often in a yoga teachers training course also, it need not be it is not often always very well structured, right? So often either the spirit is there and the structure is missing, or it's very well beautifully structured and laid out and manuals are there, but there is no spirit, right? 90% of times we find one or the other of these things. So really the beauty would be that we are able to combine the structure and the spirit. That is, we teach it from the right perspective, and yet don't treat that as enough. We facilitate that spirit to be imbibed into the person by a well-structured and a well-delivered and a well-laid out curriculum.
Sunil ji, I would go back to the previous verses where he says that this Karma Yogi is a model. You see, the structure, the what do you say, the syllabus, and all is fine. But if the teacher does not practice what he preaches, then it just becomes like a college. Okay, you give the education. It's like any other gyan and information, not a special knowledge. But if the teacher is like a model, that's what we're talking about in this Karma Yoga thing, that the Karma Yogi becomes a model automatically because he's practicing. And then he starts the institution and people follow not because of the syllabus and everything, the course. See, asanas you can learn from anywhere. But where do you learn balance of mind? You see a model. Like even in chapter 2, Arjun is asking him, how does he sit? How does he walk? How does he talk? You actually want to see a person in flesh and blood. So that model thing, being a model is very, very important. If you had to introduce Dr. Saab, there was only one line. He practices what he preaches. Nobody said he's a Sanskrit scholar, he's so and so, he's this, he's that. It was just a short and a brief thing. He practices what he preaches. So I think one has to just follow what one does. Even if one is in the corporate world, there are some values which one has to follow. One cannot slide down on those values. That's what makes a human being what he is. When somebody has, earned a lot of money, there are people who say, "Kuch to gadbad hai." I mean, it may or may not be true, but it's very common to say that. But if a person really follows what he preaches, I mean, follows the scriptures or follows the teachings word is used, that you follow this teaching without criticizing, have faith. I think that is most essential.
Yeah, I will have something to say. Sir, you were wanting to say something. Okay, so that's absolutely right. What I'm saying here is that spirit is indispensable. It's necessary, but I'm saying in the modern world, it's not sufficient. Without spirit, there is no yoga. So it just goes up.
Yeah.
There are places where there is neither spirit nor is there structure.
True.
Those are also masquerading as yoga institutions and turning out, kind of so-called teachers. But in my experience, limited experience, and maybe, whatever, I find that both the inside and the outside today have to be at the level of excellence. Either one or the other is no longer sufficient.
True.
Right. So that's all my point is.
Yeah. True.
So there is Gyan as well as Vigyan.
Yeah.
So you impart Gyan, but you also impart Vigyan.
Yeah.
One without the other is incomplete in terms of and the whole thing is in the context of preparing yoga teachers, as Sir had kind of brought up.
True. Okay. So shall we go on?
Indriyani manobuddhir asya adhishtanam uchyate etair vimohayati esha jnanam avritya dehinam.
So the seat, the senses, the mind, intellect are declared to be its seat, covering the knowledge through these. It deludes, the desire deludes the embodied soul. So basically the desire enters through the small openings of the senses and then it spreads through the system and overpowers the individual. So then what is to be done?
Tasmat tvam indriyani adau niyamya bharatarshava papmanam prajahi yenam Jnana Vijnana Nashanam.
Yeah. So he says, therefore, Arjun, you must first control your senses and then kill this evil thing which obstructs knowledge and Jnana and Vijnan. Yeah. So the senses are the openings, the chief culprits. They don't allow the steadiness of mind. And yeah, but when we were doing this verse, Dr. Saab said that you should start from the highest point. Start from the intellect, control the mind, and then control the senses. Okay, then the next verse says that. So start how to control it. Now Krishna is giving the answer. Yeah,
I-
Sunil.
Sorry if I can just interject. That's absolutely right. Because you go to the senses, you don't have any levers on them. It's
Correct.
like China is the big daddy of Pakistan.
Yeah,
Instead of addressing Pakistan, address China directly, which we are doing.
correct.
Similarly, intellect is the big daddy of the senses. All sensory input comes to the mind and then to the intellect.
Correct. Yeah,
When we address that, we automatically address the senses.
correct. Address the boss.
Ha.
Okay.
No, I have a question here.
Yes, yes, please.
See, at one point we are saying that Prakritim Yanti Bhutani, which means that people cannot get rid of Prakriti, and
True.
Prakriti is Trigunatmak.
Yeah,
That means Rajoguna is part of Prakriti.
correct.
Now you are saying that whatever comes out of Rajogun is to be treated as enemy and is to be killed. How is it possible? In other words, I am asking more specifically that Rajoguna I cannot destroy, but what comes out of Rajoguna is Kama and Krodha. Those I can destroy, but I cannot destroy Rajoguna.
True.
So how is this possible? That is the question.
Yes. So, yes, sir. So it's not possible to destroy Rajo, but you can overpower it, right? By Sattva. Can you overpower it by Sattva? You can conquer Tamas by Rajas, and you can conquer Rajas by Sattva. And after that, you can conquer all the three gunas. So Sattva is Tamas is laziness, and then Rajas is useful to handle that laziness, to get into activity. Now Rajas is activity, but the right activity can subdue Rajas. We are not against these; they are there to help us. More powerful than all of this is the intellect, that discrimination, that I can't allow the Rajas to overpower me. I can't allow Tamas to overpower me. And that discrimination is nothing else but Sattva.
I am with you, Ashaji, but my question is about destroying desire. Kama
Destroy.
has to be prajahi means you have to burn it completely.
Yeah, so you're destroying the outcome of Rajas by
So
following
is it possible to destroy
Absolutely.
desire?
It is, you have to conquer it. You don't allow it to cloud your intellect. You use it for, see, I would look at it like that. When Vyas is born, see, this all comes in the Mahabharata. So I have been thinking about it. The Mahabharata starts with the story of the birth of Vyas. How is Vyas born? Sage Parashar has this desire, and then he approaches Satyavati, and then Vyas is born, and Vyas grows up immediately and goes into the forest for spiritual study or thinking or meditation. And what is the purpose of his birth? Everything is very clear. The purpose is to write this epic and to bring about reform in society. So now desire is there. That Rajogun has to be there because it can help you to uplift yourself. In a positive way, if you use it, it helps you to uplift yourself. Later on also, Vinoba says that this desire is there, Rajogun. How do you subdue it? By Sattva. by doing the right things. Now, Arjun is told, Arjun has that Rajogun, right? He's a warrior. How is he going to act? How is he going to fight? But he has to fight in the right way. So, under the influence of Sattva, you use the Rajogun. You channelize it. You redirect the desire for a greater purpose. So when he does his duty, that very act of killing becomes sattvic. There is no residue of that. He's free from bondage. He's free from karma because he has done the right duty. So he uses sattva to use. So there is one sir in our institute, and he always draws this parallel of this Bhagavad Gita. So he says Duryodhana is beyond reform. Bhim also is like Duryodhan. He's given to eating so much, and he's a very Rajasic person, Bhim. But he says Bhim is under the influence of Yudhishthir. Whatever Yudhishthir says, Bhim obeys. That becomes his, saving grace, or his savior, Yudhishthir. But Duryodhan has no such head over him. He doesn't listen to Bhishma and Vidur. They are out of his system. He listens to his father, who's again a messed up personality in his head. So, which is not a right term, but Dhritarashtra, which is an uncivilized way of talking. Sorry. But Dhritarashtra is not a very clear-headed person. He's a king. He's a king of Hastinapur. But unfortunately, he's blind and he cannot think properly. He's totally under the influence of desire. So I don't know, sir, if that answers your question about.
So during my PhD years, 2 years, it was a very unusual kind of process. And I reflected a great deal on the gunas. Because at the end of the day, that is the source out of what everything else comes. And what I found, right or wrong, is this: that each guna has certain potential. It can be used positively, it can be used negatively. So when the individual's orientation is appreciative or constructive, then that guna delivers a certain outcome. And when the individual's orientation is negative or critical, then it delivers a different outcome. So, tamas, when used constructively, actually delivers transformation, as happens in the case of coal when subjected to heat and pressure, becoming diamond. Whereas when tamas is used negatively, it can lead to annihilation. Nobody can be as destructive as a tamasic person can be. Rajas, when positively used, it leads to cooperation, synergy. When Rajas is negatively deployed, it leads to domination. Interestingly, sattva, when constructively channelized, right, it leads to kind of excellence. It leads to clarity. It leads to finesse. But when sattva is negatively employed, it leads to cunningness, calculativeness,
Ahankar.
Ahankar. So, therefore, here of course mention is Rajogun because Kam is supposed to arise from Rajogun. But as Ashish, you rightly said, of course we can't do anything about the gunas. They are the very fabric of the cosmos. But what we can certainly do is to deploy it like a tool, constructively. So even if my nature, so therefore the critical point is this: even if I am oriented a certain way, right? Like in my personal case, I feel that Rajas is, at least in the current phase, Rajas seems to be the maximum. In my Ayurvedic profile, also Pitta is the highest. It kind of corresponds with Rajas, I think. So one is, my God, why should Sattva not be the thing? Well, it doesn't matter. Okay, if Rajas is where your personality is kind of dominant, fine. You employ it for, it's the outcome that it can create. So, and that for me, I mean, and I've found that to be pretty much true over these, let's say, 10, 11 years, since the time my is completed. So, so what I think, therefore, sir, the critical thing is, whatever it is that we have, whether a guna, whether a situation, can we use that creatively to a certain benefit or a certain result, or we can use it uncreative. Think of the best of situation, like food. The best of food, freshest, most nutritious food. If you allow it to kind of rot and then you have it, it's gone. If you have too much of it, food is gone. If you're having that while engaged with hundreds of other activities, again, it will not deliver its So therefore, it's not what we have, it's how we choose to deploy it that I think becomes significant. I don't know whether this intervention merited here, but I just thought it was relevant.
Yeah, true. So we come to the point of samatvam, being balanced and using them. Okay. So we move on to the next verse.
इंद्रियाणि पराण्याहुर इंद्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिर् यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः.
So he said the senses are said to be greater than the body. Greater than the senses is the mind. Greater than the mind is the intellect. And what is greater than the intellect is the self. So now he's explaining the enemy. That enemy can be conquered because greater than the, he's explaining the whole thing. The senses, the mind, the intellect, and above the intellect, the consciousness, because of which all this happens. So then what should we do when we understand all this? Shall we go to the next verse?
Yes. एवं बुद्धेः परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम्.
So he says, Arjun, knowing the self which is higher than the intellect and subduing the mind by reason, kill this enemy in the form of desire that is hard to overcome. Okay, so he's told how to kill the enemy. So what is the enemy? What is the seed? What does it do? How we can conquer it? So Vinoba Bhave puts it he doesn't explain all this. He just gives one paragraph, and one line of that paragraph says, a karma yogi should be the embodiment of self-restraint.
Of self-restraint.
Yeah, that's it. Nothing else. No explanation. Just be aware and just go on controlling or restraining yourself. That's all. So no more discussions, only practice what is being told. Control yourself, use your intellect. That's all. So now, what would help is a strong decision. A strong decision that I am on this path and I have to do away with everything which is not required. So, abhyas. See, that Vairagya part of the Abhyas is there, but Vairagya part is not even described so much. It's more of that Abhyas. Continuously telling yourself that I am on this path, that I give up everything, but I just go on following the good path. I just go on walking on that good path. And nothing has to come in between. There is no question of giving up. There is no question of anything coming in between. That I am so focused that nothing anyway comes in between. So constant practice of this path. Okay, so from my side, chapter 3 is done. So any questions, any comments?
Not from my side. Not from my side.
So this Arjun, this character of Arjun, when he was a small child also, Dronacharya has this competition, the shooting competition, to shoot the bird of the eye. And he calls everybody and he says, what do you all see? So they say, we see the eye, we see the bird, we see the sky, we see the leaves, the trees, everything. And then he's asking Arjun. Arjun says, I see the bird of the eye. So he says, shoot. And he tells all the others, move away. So that focus is very important. See, Vairagya doesn't come in the picture only over here. It's only that abhyas, that only that focus. My mind is on that and I'm just walking on that path. Nothing else matters. That. Okay. So, sir, shall we wind up this chapter and start with chapter 4?
ओम तत्सत् इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुन संवादे कर्मयोगो नाम तृतीयोऽध्यायः। अथ चतुर्थोऽध्यायः। श्रीभगवानुवाच इमं विवस्वते योगं प्रोक्तवान् अहमव्ययम् विवस्वान् मनवे प्राह मनुरीक्ष्वाकवे ब्रवीत्।
Okay, so we are starting chapter 4 and Krishna starts chapter 4 and it's a total deviation. He says all this, it's not a deviation, but the line of thinking. He says that I have revealed this immortal yoga, whatever I taught you in chapter 3. I first taught it to the sun god and then Vivaswan conveyed it to his son Manu and Manu gave it to his son Ikshvaku. So then, so we'll read the next verse and then we'll discuss.
एवं परम्परा प्राप्तम् इमं राजर्षयो विदुः सकालेन महता योगो नष्टः परन्तप.
So thus transmitted in succession from father to son, Arjun, this yoga remained known to the Raj Rishis. Through long lapse of time, this yoga got lost to the world. So he's saying that this yoga, what I've taught you, is nothing new. It's very, very ancient. It's as ancient as the sun. That means it's as ancient as creation. It's there. But slowly, gradually, it got lost. And it was known to the Raj Rishis. It was known to the royal sages. Who are the royal sages? The kings. So he's telling Arjun that your family members, your lineage, you come from that lineage of royal rishis, knew all this. But over a long lapse of time, it has got lost. So,
स एवायं मया तेद्य योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति रहस्यं ह्येतदुत्तमम्.
So now the same ancient yoga, which is the supreme secret, today has been imparted to you by me as you are my devotee and you are my friend. So why am I giving you this knowledge? Because you are fit to receive this knowledge. So when we were doing this shloka, we had only one question was asked to us. Are we fit enough? No, nothing else. No explanation, nothing. Are we such devotees of God that He will impart this knowledge to us? So we have to become devotees of God, and then this knowledge will come to us. We have to become His friend, and we have to become His devotee. So now Arjun has a
Arjuna
question.
uvacha aparan bhavato janma paran janma vivasvatah kathametad vijaniyan tvamadau proktavan iti.
So now Arjun says, but you are just born, and the birth of Vibhaswan dates back to remote antiquity. How am I to believe that you imparted this yoga at the beginning of creation? So now, when he says, I'm your friend, so naturally Arjun has this question that you're my friend, then how can you give this knowledge? So then Krishna says, okay,
Shri Bhagavan uvacha bahuni me vyatitani janmani tava cha Arjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam vetha parantapa.
yeah. So he says, Arjun, you and I have passed through many births. I remember them all, you do not remember. Now, of course, Arjun cannot remember because he's an ordinary mortal and Krishna is God. He has a different level of concentration and he has a different level of awareness. He's God. There's nothing higher than him. So we are like Arjun. So
Ajopi san nvyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san prakritim swam adhisthaya sambhavami atma mayaya.
yeah. So he says, though birthless and immortal and the Lord of all beings, I manifest myself through my own Yogmaya, keeping my nature in control. God can be born as per his wish or desire or as per the need. So periodically he's born also to establish law and order in this world. But he says that I manifest myself whenever I want to. Yeah. So these things occur, evil reaches the climax, and then God comes whenever it is required.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham.
So whenever righteousness is on the decline and unrighteousness is in the ascendant, then I body myself forth. So when there is chaos in the world, when there is total disorganization in the world, then God comes to establish law and order. So we can't lose hope in the most difficult situations. Things will happen. He's also assuring us that I'm there and I will come to protect you. Don't lose hope. You may reach the end of your patience, the end of your faith, but I'm there. So, any questions?
So it means that in different parts of the world, at different points of time, religious leaders have come up,
Yeah.
prophets have come up,
Yes.
Son of God has come up.
Yeah.
So it applies to all of them.
Yes. It's a whole universe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is bound by time and peace in a way, historically.
Yeah. And also, it means that in small ways, like we have this class, so we are trying to grow, we are trying to, form a kind of a setup. So in small ways, these things happen. Maybe you see in day-to-day life also people get fed up or they get frustrated or they have found the what do you say the um, uselessness, or I can't find a better word, that this is really not working out. And then they give up, they leave. We hear people from the corporate world also, they simply give up. And they may just go to the mountains, like the monk who sold his Ferrari. Where does that come from? From a kind of a disillusionment. Get totally disillusioned with this kind of working. And then you take up to another path. So it can happen in small ways also.
Um, two things. One is that I believe, and it's just a kind of conjecture, a theory, whatever, that human consciousness reaches a peak every once in a while when you see a number of people in many parts of the world, or even the same part of the world, number of good teachers emerging. Like they say, about 2,500 years back was one such episode when we had Lord Buddha and Lord Mahavir, both very highly realized, both founders of major religions, were actually preaching at the same time. So that is said to have been one peak. Before that, another 2,500 years was when Patanjali, and several others were said to have emerged and, systematized this knowledge. So one is that whether you say it's through the agency of the God in a personified form, or whether it is nature itself, like a pendulum, it would reach a certain amplitude. I mean, it's journeying to one side, and then naturally it starts its reverse journey. It's in the very natural, scheme of things. So here, maybe it's just in a personified form. He's saying that, look, I always provide a check and a balance. Right? So look at it any which way, whether it's natural, whether it's personified. But there are phases of consciousness that the world goes through,
True.
and that every once in a while correction takes place.
Yes. Correct.
If we link it to the previous chapter, last verse, where we are talking about that human consciousness which is above the intellect. So that human consciousness cannot be killed.
No.
And it will look at the situation in the world, and it will think of bringing about a transformation. And that is the transformative potential which the world has, and it can be driven by that supreme consciousness, if I may use the word, going by the last verse of chapter 3.
Yes.
So it is saying that actually it is the supreme consciousness which is present in human beings and mankind, which will bring about that transformation.
True.
Or which will lead that transformation. May not bring it about, but lead that transformation.
True.
So, see, I think what happens is that consciousness tends to get clouded to various degrees. So when the clouding is less and it's able to, or it manifests to a greater degree, that is it. That is the sum and substance of transformation. The moment you are guided, or you can detect or guide by consciousness, that's all there is. Everything else will flow naturally. So I think at different points, the clouding is more or less like the sun gets clouded to a less or a small degree. I think that keeps varying.
True, very true. Yes, sir.
परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे.
Yeah. For the protection of the virtuous, and for the extirpation of evildoers, and for establishing dharma on a firm footing, I manifest myself from age to age. So same thing, protection of dharma. What Sunilji rightly said that when there is an extreme crisis in society, nature takes over. Now, the same thing is kind of emphasized in this verse. So now the
Yeah.
word is that who is that evil person he's talking about? Dushkritam. The evil tendencies in us. When the evil tendencies in us reach out of proportion, then nature comes. It can be anything. It can be a tsunami. It can be anything. We play with the environment. It happens in a person. The evil tendencies go up. It's just reflected. And then nature acts up.
But this particular verse has been used. It has been used to support the avatar concept.
Yeah,
That there will be an avatar and he will save me,
correct.
which is one way of looking at it.
Yeah,
But to equate it with the human consciousness and collective consciousness is another way of looking at it.
yes, sir.
So
True.
we don't become fatalistic that some avatar will come and save me.
Yeah. And we don't limit the Bhagavad Gita to India and Avatar.
Right.
It's a universal concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it has to be universal concept, then we have to interpret it in a different way in today's
Universal way.
context.
True,
In
true.
today's context.
Very true. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, sir. So we have 2 minutes. Maybe we can just read the other one.
You want me to read the other one?
Yeah, we have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Janma karma cha
Janma
me
karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti sorjuna.
Yeah. So he says that Arjun, my birth and my activities are divine. He who knows this in reality is not reborn on leaving his body, but he comes to me. So if we have to understand God, we have to become divine. We have to think. We have to polish our consciousness. We have to remove the clouds and allow the consciousness to shine. And then we understand this in the right perspective. We are free. So we leave on this verse. Maybe we can reflect on it, but we can discuss it a little more next time since we don't have time today.
Right.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Thank you.